Great morning. So today we're going to look at two pie charts and we're going to look at the content to include in them. After we've done that, we will look at some of the grammar. So for the two pie charts are here. So just a reminder, you should be aiming to write 150 words. You need to summarize the information, so you don't need to say everything. You just report on the main features. Okay, so in the IELTS exam, you have about 20 minutes for the task. If I teach in a classroom for AE2, you actually have a longer time. Okay, so when you're doing graph writing, there are some questions you must always ask yourself. So is it one time period or changes over time? So changes over time, there'll be many time periods in the graph. How do you know that? You should be able to tell from the graphs. What do the two pie charts show? Are they similar or different? Which segments change? How did they change? How could you group the information? What interesting things can you find out about the numbers? Okay, so pause the video now and answer these questions. It's very important when you're learning. You don't just sit back passively and listen. You need to actually think and do things. So pause the video, answer these 7 questions about the two graphs which are here. Okay, welcome back. So I trust you answered the questions. You've written down a few notes. So we'll go over a couple of things. Okay, so these two pie charts, this pie chart shows one time period. The time period is 2005. So you'll do some comparisons here. This pie chart shows 2010. So you'll do some comparisons within the pie chart here. The thing about this, the two pie charts are different years. So you'll also do some changes over time. So comparisons between the 2 years. For example, between this figure for 35 and this 30% figure. Okay, how do we know it is both? Because we've looked at the years up here. For the two pie charts, are they similar or different? Okay, so when I look at them, there looks like there are some differences, not completely different, but it looks like there are some significant differences. So if we look at how it's changed, okay, so the share of electrical and appliances online sales for retail sectors in Canada went down. We know this because it started at 35 and went down to 30. For food and beverage, it started at 22% and went up to 32%, so this is increased. For home furnishings, it started at 25% and went to 15%, so it's gone down. Video games went from 18% to 23%, so that's increased. I suggest when you're doing your graph writing, you just use little arrows on your question paper to help yourself. Okay, couple of other things are important to mention. This 35% I think is quite important. Why? Because it's the highest percentage in 2005. Oh, sorry, it was the highest percentage in 2005. For the same reason, I think this 32% is important because it was food and beverage had the highest percentage of online sales in 2010. These things are the essential ones. Other big changes, this 15 to 25 is quite a significant increase. So that is something else you may want to mention. How could you group the information? Okay, there are a couple of ways of organizing it. The one many people do, which is a mistake, is writing about this pie chart first, and then after that writing about this pie chart second. The reason I say that's a mistake is because you need to compare across the 2 years as well. Okay, so it's very tricky to do it that way. The way I would recommend organizing this is for the graph for the sectors which increased in market share. So for example, it would be food and beverage and video games. I can just look at my arrows down here in one paragraph in the main body. In the second paragraph in the main body, I would have which sectors decreased. So that is how I suggest you organize it. Interesting things about the numbers. Nothing leaps out straight away. 23% is just under 25%, and 25% is 1/4. So you can show off your vocabulary if you use phrases like 1/4. 25% is exactly 1/4. 32% is very close to 33%. 33% is 1/3. I'm just looking to see if there's anything we could use with doubled. And basically there's not for this that I can see easily. Okay, so these are questions you should always ask yourself before you start any graph writing. Before you write your introduction, you should know the answer to these questions. And in your introduction, you basically need to answer these two questions. What do the graphs show? Are the two graphs similar? So it should be 2 sentences. It should take you about 3 minutes to write it. So pause the video now. Actually answer these 2 questions in full sentences as if you're writing your introduction. Okay, welcome back. So we'll look at an introduction paragraph. So we've got the 2 pie charts illustrate the percentage of online sales across 4 different retail sectors in Canada in the years 2005 and 2010. So this is what the graph shows. Second answer, it's clear that there were significant differences. So we're basically saying no, they are not similar, they are different. Okay, couple of things to note here. 1, pie charts. So it's showing that we know what kind of graph this is. There's 2 of them. So for the verb, we don't need the S for the present simple. Okay, alternatives to illustrate. Shows, but shows is very common. Presents information about. Presents data about. So there's a variety of phrases you could use. The percentages of. Okay, you could have the percentage of as well. Both of those are possible. Big difference between percentage and number. Most of the time with pie charts, it will show percentages. Okay, and then of what? Online sales across 4 different sectors. So you don't need to list out the sectors. We can just say there are 4 sectors. Okay, we should say where in Canada, and we should say when in the years 2005 and 2010. Notice it is not between 2005 and 2010 because we don't have all of the information. It's just 2005 and 2010. Then our second sentence, there were significant differences. Okay, simple. Okay, so have a look back at your introduction paragraph. Is it similar to this? Is it different? Different doesn't mean it is wrong. It doesn't mean it is bad. It could be different in a good way. Okay, but it's important that you are answering these 2 questions in the introduction. Okay, for the second paragraph, again, we got the graphs up here. Which sector's share of online sales increased over the period? So in this paragraph, we're looking at the sectors which increased their market share between 2005 and 2010. And you also need to know which sector increased the most and which was the biggest sector. Okay, so again, you need to actually do the work. You need to write this information down. So you need to write it in a paragraph. Each paragraph should be about 50 to 60 words. So roughly that will be 4 to 5 sentences. So write a paragraph about which sectors increase their market share for online sales between in 2010. Remember, when you're writing, when is this about? 2005 and 2010, so it's about the past. Because it changes over time, we should be using verbs like increased, decreased, dropped, grew. Okay, so make sure you're using a variety of vocabulary. Also, for example, something like food and beverage, a big increase, and it was also the largest number by the end. Okay, so write your paragraph now. It should take you about 6 minutes. Okay, welcome back. So we'll look at one example. Over the period, food and beverage and video games gained market share. So this is effect like our topic sentence. So we know from here, this paragraph is going to be about food and beverage and video games and about gaining market share. So that means they increased. Okay, then we got into more details. By 2010, food and beverage sales predominated with almost a third of online sales. Predominated means it had the biggest share. Okay, this was a dramatic increase of 10%. So it was 32% here. It was 22% in 2005. 32 minus 22 is 10. Okay, so it tells us how much it increased by. And I think this is the biggest increase as well. So we've got this was a dramatic increase. We could have this was the biggest increase. Okay, video games, which was the smallest sector in 2005. So this 18% is lower than all of the other percentages in this pie chart. Grew to almost a quarter. So over here, it's 23%, which is almost 25%. It's just under. And it grew to almost a quarter in 2010. Okay, couple of things to notice. Almost a quarter, almost a third. So we've used fractions a third and a quarter. Probably we shouldn't repeat almost, so we could use nearly instead. Okay, we've used over the period at the beginning. Which period is this? It links back to our introduction. From our introduction, we know it is the period here. Okay, okay, we've got the noun way. This was a, then we dramatic, we got an adjective, increase is a noun. There are other adjectives we could use for a big change. Can you think of any? So for example, significant, we could have. Yeah, okay, so we got the noun way. And do we have the verb way? Yes, we got the verb way as well here. So video games grew to almost a quarter of the market. Okay, we've also used non-defining relative clauses. So this is just adding extra information. So this is very useful for combining ideas into one sentence. So if you've got questions about how to do this, feel free to put them in the comments below. Okay, so after the second paragraph, can you guess what comes next? Of course, it's the third paragraph. What will go in the third paragraph? Logically, this is about sectors which grew. The third paragraph will be about sectors which were in decline. Okay, so again, before you look at what we have, ask yourself for the third paragraph, which sector shares of online sales decreased over the period? So decreased, not increased. Which sector decreased the most? Which was the smallest sector? So pause the video now and think about these questions before. Think about the questions and write the paragraph before you look at the next bit. Okay, so welcome back. So we've got our paragraph here. So again, it's about 4 lines. 4 sentences. 1, 2. It's actually 3 sentences, 3 longer sentences. Okay, things to notice. We start with in contrast. So this shows that there is a difference from the previous paragraph. So previous paragraph was about things which increased. This one is about things which decrease. So it's a clear connection between the paragraphs. Then we've got, in effect, our topic sentence again. The market share of electronics and appliances and home furnishings declined. Decline just means decreased. So clear topic sentence. So in English, you've got a very clear topic sentence. It's very direct. So I know it's different from many Asian languages. Next sentence, although. So we're going to have two ideas in this sentence, which are different. Electronics and appliances took up the largest segment of the market in 2005. So it had 35%, so that is a good thing. By 2010, its share had dropped to 30%. So it was the biggest one here. So you think it is all very good, but it dropped, so it's not so good if you're in that business anyway. So although connects the two ideas together. Other things to notice, we've got two pie charts here, 2 different years. We've used by 2010, had dropped. So we've used a past perfect together with by 2010 because 2010 is the past. Sometime between 2005 and 2010, so the past of the past, its share had dropped to 30%. Okay, then we move on to home furnishings. We've not put in a word like furthermore or moreover just because it seems very forced to put it in here. You don't need to have a linking word in every sentence. Home furnishing share of online sales followed a similar trend and accounted for the smaller sector by the end of the period at 15%. Okay, so again, followed a similar trend is a useful phrase. A similar trend. A similar trend to what? A similar trend to electronics and appliances. So electronics and appliances dropped, and say home furnishing, the market share of home furnishings or the online sales also dropped for home furnishings. Okay, accounted for the smaller sector. So we've got the smaller sector. So 15% is lower than all of the rest. So notice we're comparing across years, so 25% to 15%, and also within the same year. So when it's across years, we are following the noun way or verb way, so using things like dropped. When it's within the same year, we're using things like comparatives, followed a similar trend. Okay, accounted for is a useful phrase as well for pie charts. So here we're basically just saying home furnishings accounted for 15% of online sales. Okay, so we've included the two which decreased, and we said that they are the smaller sectors. Notice we're not using decreased all of the time. So we've used declined and had dropped here. Okay, and there are also connections between the sentences and from this paragraph to the previous paragraph. After this paragraph, there should be the conclusion. So the conclusion is very short, and it is just one sentence. So just giving a general trend. Okay, so for the conclusion, there are 3 things you could do. You do not need to do all 3 of these. Just one sentence is okay for the conclusion. So you could say which sectors increased or decreased. What was the most significant difference? And was the information similar or different? So you just pick one of these. You do not need to do all 3. Like the introduction, in the conclusion there should be no numbers, no specific information. Okay, so pause the video now and write your conclusion. Okay, so start with a concluding phrase. In conclusion, then very simple, food and beverage and video increased their share of online sales in Canada over the period. Okay, so it's very simple. Okay, so this is one way of organizing your graph writing when there are 2 pie charts. Other teachers will say you don't need the conclusion, and to be honest, they're right, but this is one way you can follow if you're not sure how to structure your work. Okay, so this is the model. It's very similar to what we've looked at already. There may be one or two slight changes. I suggest if you want some feedback, you could write your introduction or your paragraphs and put it in the comments down below, and I will try and look at it. Or perhaps if other people are also commenting, they can have a look at it as well and give you feedback. Okay, so that is just a summary of how to write about 2 pie charts and how you can organize the information. So the tricky thing is to do comparisons within it and also changes over time across the two years. Okay, so it's very simple. If you just follow the structure you've been given here, and then you can do very well for this section. Okay, thanks guys, have a great day.